Hello everyone and welcome back to class. Yesterday on the document camera we were looking at the hierarchy of DNA through a flip book, and you actually created one of these right here that showed you the 6 basic components of the hierarchy of genetic material, and you drew pictures to show how all of those components were related. If you have not done this, go back to yesterday's lesson and complete this assignment. Today what we're going to focus on is we're going to look at the intimate relationships between each of these components. So we're going to look at all of those 6 components, from cell to nucleus to chromosome to DNA to genes and all the way to nitrogen bases. We're going to look at how each of these things are closely related. Now, notice how we listed this out at the top of the paper. There's going to come a time where I'm not going to be able to do this for you, whether it be an assessment or a project or something like this. This is a really good way to help you stay on track and make sure that you're not getting things mixed up. And you'll see exactly what we're talking about with this exercise today. What we're doing is we're looking at the relationships between each of these things. So for instance, if we want to compare the cell and the nucleus, the first thing I want to establish is which one is larger on the hierarchy. So we can go up to our little cheat sheet that we made for ourselves and say, okay, we know that this side is larger and this side is smaller. So which one is larger, the cell or the nucleus? Obviously, we know that the cell has to be larger, so we're going to use that greater than sign just like we use in math class. Now, we're not going to stop there because we are in 8th grade. We want to be able to articulate our thoughts on this and give reasoning and rationale behind why we say that the cell is bigger than the nucleus. Just like we do in our bell work, we want to give some reasoning behind this. So we want to say that the nucleus is a structure in eukaryotic cells that holds genetic material. So we've written that in a complete sentence. We've explained the relationship between these two things, and we understand how they are connected. Let's try another one. What about nitrogen bases and genes? So once again, our first step is to look on the hierarchy and figure out which one is larger, which one is smaller. We see genes are right here, just before nitrogen bases. So we know that nitrogen bases are smaller than genes, or lesser than symbol with genes. If we look back to our flip book yesterday, we see that our nitrogen bases completely make up our genes, and the different combinations of those nitrogen bases lead to the different expression or traits or different variations. So essentially what we're doing is we're putting that definition or that understanding into words right here. So we have different combinations of nitrogen bases. Really, we can say nitrogen base pairs because we know that they are paired up, A with T, G with C. Different combinations of nitrogen base pairs allow for different expression of genes or traits. So a lot of people ask, what's the difference between these genes and traits? And I want to pause for just a moment and figure out or explain what this difference is. So the genes is the actual genetic component, like we said, our DNA. The trait is how it manifests physically. So that would be like your eye color, things like that, how tall you are. See, there's some of y'all, and here's Miss Shelton right here. I'm tiny, short-wise. So the gene is the genetic expression, the trait is the physical manifestation of that gene. So let's continue here. I want you to try this one on your own. What is the relationship between the DNA and the nucleus? Pause the video here and write down your answer. Okay, so when we look at our hierarchy, we see that the DNA is much smaller than the nucleus, and that makes sense because the DNA is housed inside the nucleus, and you can't fit the nucleus in the DNA if it's the other way around. So if you consider these things in size, that'll help you out as well. So we know that the nucleus is larger than DNA. So we know that DNA is tightly coiled into chromosomes, which are housed or found in the nucleus. Now, you don't have to have exactly this, but as long as you have a statement that shows the relationship between these two things, you are good to go. I want you to try another one. What about chromosomes?
Would every
And
teacher that
DNA.
has sixth grade first lunch please report to the cafeteria for a meeting? Everybody that has sixth grade first lunch, please report to the cafeteria. Thank you.
Okay, so what is the relationship between chromosomes and DNA? If you haven't paused the video already, go ahead and do so. Okay, we know that the definition of chromosome is tightly coiled or tightly packaged DNA. So we know that chromosomes are larger than DNA because it has all that DNA put together, right? So we know that DNA tightly coils into structures called chromosomes. It has the same material, it has the same information, it's just packaged differently. Okay, we'll try one more on your own and then we will be done with this exercise. The last one I want you to work out on your own is the relationship between genes and DNA. Pause the video and write down your answer. Okay. We know that genes are small sections of DNA, so obviously DNA is going to be bigger. So once again, genes are small sections of DNA that control a specific trait. Okay, so once again, you don't have to have these things with this exact wording or verbiage or anything. As long as you have a complete sentence that shows the relationship between these components, you are good to go. You will have some assessments coming up later on where it is very important for you to understand the relationship between these things. So it would be beneficial for you to just kind of take these names randomly, write down one or two of the components and find the relationship between those two things, like nitrogen bases and nucleus, DNA and cell, things like that. Just pick two words out of this hierarchy and find the relationship between those words, and that will help you out in the long run. If you have any questions about this or want clarification on any of these relationships, you can send me a message through Schoology. Have a great day.